And welcome everyone to Belonging Deconstructed. This is the continuation of the conversation from episode 4, it's already up. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, it's on everything. And this is, generally speaking, a Patreon exclusive. This is one of the episodes for our paid Patreon members as we try to grow this podcast. Welcome to all of y'all. And, for the people who haven't joined yet, there's a reason to join. This is where we get deeper.
Yeah.
And, we start talking more about what we started talking about in the first place. And we start really getting into the whole nitty gritty of what it is that we were discussing. And I think you'll really see it extra clearly in this episode as we go further into belonging. It's the whole thing where, because Amber is both a genius and a PhD, she always has something in her back pocket that's just going to help just color or just help us really getting deep into the conversation. And because she knows these things just off the bat, she has a research paper that she brought up in one of our production meetings.
Yes.
That's what she does. I mean, that's how this whole thing started. So
it's like, I have a paper for that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna let you talk about the paper first because you just be doing that.
Yeah. So we were talking about the culture of belonging. Of course, with belonging, the thing that I got that just sort of went off in my head was really about this idea of brand community. And, as we're talking about the culture of belonging in the last session, and then what that means for brands and businesses and customers and the marketplace at large, and even Brand America, I think it's important to bring up that this concept has been studied for a pretty good long time.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite academic articles is by a couple of scholars named Munez and Ogwin. The paper is called Brand Community. It was published in 2001 in the Journal of Consumer Research. And since it's 2001, if y'all go to Google Scholar, you can find it. It's available in a nice, cute PDF. But basically, they were, I think I'm not wrong in saying they were the first to sort of coin this phrase, brand community, and think about brand community from the perspective and consideration of sociology, anthropology, and psychology. In essence, people finding community around brands, how they make rules for it. And they were specifically looking at shared consciousness, ritual and traditions, and then also a sense of morality guided by a moral code. And I want to be clear by saying that's not necessarily religious in nature.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that, say it's a brand community around a cocktail, there are particular rules of how you make that cocktail. And if you break those rules, then it's not what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be clear to let you know. So there's sort of rules of the game and rules to play. And so when we're talking about belonging, it's actually grounded in something real that can be researched and understood from a data perspective. And that also means that brands can figure out, what it is that they want to contribute to a brand community, how they help sustain and support it, and then also how they could offend it.
Yes, if they take the time to actually invest and think about things and think through things and not just think about the fact that they're selling a product or service.
Yes.
They actually look to connect with the people who are throwing their money at them. Then maybe, it helps them with sustainability and, business life and all that good stuff. Shout out to the people who say brand loyalty is dead. But I mean, it's once again, we're just back at basic principles and thinking about, what community means, what culture means, how we study it, why we study it, and all those things that really should matter. whether it's about the bottom line or not. But since this is a business podcast, yes, it has to matter to the bottom line, and it always does.
I have to take a point of privilege because you said basic principles, so that took me to Hitch.
The greatest marketing movie of all time. I just had a conversation with someone today talking about this is a movie I tell people who want to get into marketing or who want to get better at marketing to watch. It is a class. It really is. I mean, it's funny, you know, it's granted it's a rom-com, but if you think about Alex Hitchens' journey and all the stuff he's talking about,
Yeah.
it's a marketing journey.
We might have to do a whole session on Hitch.
Culture of Hitch coming in 2026.
Yes.
But yes.
All right. That's so funny. I didn't even know that. Anyway, let's continue. I'll go that way. So the other thing we talked about before is just like, in consideration of that particular paper, are there like brand communities that either you engage in or that you admire?
Yes. So as the resident sneakerhead
Yes.
of the
You are.
podcast,
Mhm. And hip hop head.
yeah, that's true. Yes. You know, shout out to the Kendrick, the ever so growing Kendrick Lamar community. But
Mhm.
in terms of sneakers, that's always the first place I go. And it's
Mhm.
not just because of the experience I had growing up in New York City or just my love of sneakers. It's also just noticing,
Yeah.
you know, it does help that I did some work with Nike at various times in my career. But at the same time, looking at it from the standpoint of someone who's done work there and also someone who's been a consumer starting way before that, that's always the first place I think
Yeah.
of in terms of brand communities. You know, the fact that they barely, if ever, sell through an ad outside of saying, oh, this thing is available, buy it at this place.
Okay, talk about that some more. They barely sell through an ad.
So when I say they barely sell through an ad,
Mhm.
I'm talking about the hard sell. Oh, you need to buy this thing or whatever. You know, the overt call to go out and buy something.
Mhm.
More often than not, those types of ads are coming from the retailers themselves.
Ah, right. Okay.
Right. So if you look at Nike's advertising, it's kind of templated, but it works.
Mm-hmm.
Show people using the product.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe have some voiceover, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
Throw just do it at the end. Put a swoosh up.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, during the Olympics, instead of doing just do it, they did winning is not for everyone. Which is just the nice way of saying it's only for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because of, you know, in part because of the athletes that they align themselves with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so anytime, I mean, when they have an athlete, say, maybe, what comes to mind? Last Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Hurts is a Team Jordan guy.
Mm-hmm.
They had a Love Hurts ad ready for the end of the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Immediate. Game's over, Love Hurts ad. Boom.
Very clever.
Done.
I do recall this.
And this is not even going into the brand community part, but it's one of those things that lays a foundation for why their brand communities work. They understand exactly who it is that they're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
They stay true to who they're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we think about the whole thing that happened with the Dream Crazy campaign, because it starred Colin Kaepernick, you had that whole quote unquote backlash that lasted for 24 hours, if that long, with people who started destroying their Nike merchandise. And instead of pulling back or apologizing, Nike said, we said what we said, and we're going to stay with it. One, they had already had Colin Kaepernick as a Nike athlete. They kept that relationship going with him when he was basically blackballed from the NFL. So it was already there. They knew who they were talking to. They talked to those people. And anyone else who wants to throw money at them, cool. If you don't like what we did, okay. We said what we said. And we know who we're talking to. Now, granted, I'm sure they also understand that the fan bases, or many of the members of those fan bases,
Mm-hmm.
who destroyed their stuff are going to have to buy it again because they license the teams that they like.
Yeah, one
So,
way or the other.
so one, we already got your money. Two, you're going to give it to us again
Mm-hmm.
because you can't not go to that college game without the merchandise. Oh, you want the real thing? Guess who does that? So,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like to consider like a marketplace like temper tantrum, and like it's important for brands to think about what's real
Mm-hmm.
and what's not as impactful for them.
Right.
For example, like all emotions and feelings are real, and everyone is entitled to their emotions and their feelings. Everyone's entitled to their disappointment. But the question becomes, whose disappointment is it? And what does that mean for your bottom line and what matters to your business?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to thinking about brand communities, and when we're talking about a shared consciousness, right? That's tied to that sort of moral responsibility or whatever the moral character is.
Mm-hmm.
There was a decision made that we're going to align with this particular athlete, in part because the people who engage in this brand in the way that helps us are supporting
Mm-hmm.
this athlete,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we don't want to I want to just say, we're not saying that brands are doing this and making these choices without being deliberate. You know, there are rules that they're following
Correct.
in part because of who they know
Mm-hmm.
is going to respond in a particular way. And so it's back to your point of it was 24-hour backlash. So what happened after? Why was it just a 24-hour backlash, essentially?
Because it was literally just a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
It was a knee-jerk reaction. So the stock price took a little bit of a hit
Mm-hmm.
that day,
Mm-hmm.
and then it bounced back. It literally just started bouncing back the next day.
But why did it bounce back?
Because it was about the people who actually cared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They stayed loyal to the people who showed them loyalty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they knew, or they had enough foresight. I think they had enough foresight to understand that there were going to be people who were upset.
Yeah, for sure.
But because they were able to make the decision to stand 10 toes down it in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
they made the people who would not be upset about it happy. All those people who were laughing at the people who destroyed their merchandise,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, so what did that actually do for you? You know, you showed that you were upset. Okay, cool. Did that really hurt their bottom line? Maybe for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
or not actually the bottom line, only the market cap, because the bottom line was still perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then the market cap jumped back up. Actually, it jumped up about, if I remember correctly, about 19% above where it was before the backlash. So they lost a little bit, regained it, and then gained more
Mm-hmm.
because they understand who they're talking to. And this is another foundation on how you can build a brand community. This is why you have people who stay with all the Air products, with Air Jordan
Yeah.
products, with, I mean, I have Spizike lows on right now, you know, and we're talking just like I and some of my friends call them Franken Jordans. Like these are hybrids of different Jordan lines. You know, you have the people who've rocked with Nike SB for a very long time, in part because they did stuff with folks like Nigel Sylvester, who's now actually doing Jordans too, or people like Paul Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people who were in those communities and saying, oh, okay, oh, so you rock with us? Like, how can we rock with you?
Mm-hmm.
That's the easiest way to build brand communities, to be there as a brand for your community, to be there as a brand to go ahead and find different ways you can connect with people, not to try to just take from or extract from, how do you actually show your appreciation for those who are giving you money?
Mhm.
And Nike is one of those companies that does it well. And also just those types of communities like sneaker communities or like those streetwear communities or music communities who are just in it for real. How do you show them that you are in it for real? You know, it's not just Nike. You can talk about Vans. You can talk
Mhm.
about Reebok in certain ways. You can talk about Adidas, especially during like the heydays of Yeezy. You can talk about a Bathing Ape, otherwise known as Bape.
Mhm.
You can talk about all of these places
Mhm.
that do these things like this. You can even, and I'm going to bring up this brand, but it's going to also seep into the next episode that we do. You're even talking about a brand like Supreme,
Okay. Mhm.
you know, where there's a love for Supreme. There's something around that drop culture
Mhm.
that Bape also knows well, that Nike definitely knows well. You have people lined up outside of retailers waiting for the store to open so they can get the the latest pair of whatever it is that's coming
Mhm.
out. Um, but Supreme definitely did a lot to contribute to that type of community activity. You know, having a store on the Lower East Side and a lot of that New York culture, which is gonna it's gonna show my bias as a native New Yorker a little bit, but you know,
It's
there's just a lot
okay.
of things that happen
We're
here.
here.
Yeah. But just the fact that the kind of activity and the type of fervor that happens with these brands are an illustration of not only how brand communities work, but also why they work.
Mhm.
Now I'm gonna save a little bit stuff on Supreme
Mhm.
for later because there's a nice circle. I was thinking about wearing uh my uh Supreme shirt. It's
Mhm.
not a bootleg, people, but it's a little thing that I have, you know, my own commentary that uh will definitely show up on the podcast one day. But there are a lot of questions about the authenticity of the Supreme brand, which I could say puts the quality of the brand or the sustainability of the brand or the
Mhm.
success of the brand in a lower place than it could or maybe should be. But I do want, before we go into that, I do want to talk about other brand communities, more examples of how to do it right before we start going into how to do it wrong.
Well, okay. So we'll put a pin on Supreme just because yeah, I know where we're going
Mhm,
um for the next podcast. So we can hold off on that one.
mhm,
Um I think when we're talking about particularly with like rituals and traditions, I have to say um Sephora just kind of gets me every time. Um, One of the things that I appreciate as a consumer of various like skincare and makeup products as it relates to social media is that there are very specific influencers that have saved me a lot of money by way of their own trial. um just for me with my complexion, and just the texture and tone of my skin, like, I really wanna make sure that if I'm applying color to my face because I wanna add some more dimension or interest, or I wanna make certain features, like, pop, I wanna make sure that it's gonna do that.
mhm,
So I have several influencers that I follow, various complexions, various tones, browns, you name it, from the fairest of the fair to the brownest of the brown. And I'm curious about what happens when all of them are trying the same new product or they're trying the same drop? Does that color of eyeshadow pop on everyone's skin,
Hmm.
regardless? Because that lets me know that it's true to form and it's true to color. So I'm like, okay. So that's step one, is like, that's the research part, right? Like, and we've read a lot about before people engage in products, like they're doing a lot of whatever their version of online sort of research is. Well, that's mine when it comes to makeup. Step two, okay, now we got to go to the store. Now, because if I go into Sephora or a place like Sephora, I can be like a kid in a candy store. Because the one thing that I can appreciate about an experience about that kind of retail is that it doesn't remind me of how I was intimidated as a young girl to go into department store for things. Like, I remember when I was probably like 12 or 13, my mother put me on my first skincare system, because before I was allowed to wear makeup, the skincare routine had to be together, according to my mother. And I didn't push back on her too much because she looked great. Like, everybody always thought my mom was like 15, sometimes 20 years younger than she actually was. And so I'm like, okay, let me listen. I know a lot of parents don't get that from teenagers, so they could probably appreciate that. But even going to Clinique in the department store when I was younger, it just felt very intimidating. There are like all these ladies with their like, clinical like jackets and coats on. Um, and their makeup was just, when I was young, it just always seemed severe to me, and just like, it's just overwhelming. It's just a lot. But in Sephora, and perhaps because I'm older, more settled in myself, in that environment, it always felt inviting. Everything always felt approachable. Everything always felt like it could be for me, even if it wasn't the thing that I went in there to shop for. And then on top of that, from an experience standpoint, I had somebody that I could access that could guide me, that could show me, that wasn't just uh, it wasn't just about like, oh, the product that I came for. It's, oh, you want that product?
Hmm.
Cool. I could get you that. Here's something else you might like better. Or here's something else you might want to pair with that. And oh, by the way, let me sit you right here and show you how it shows up on your skin. And you can compare your contrast. You can see for yourself. Would you like to try? Would I? Yes. And like, that's why I don't go in there that much. Because I would be broke. Because it's just always some like new bell and whistle. But every time I go there, I always feel a part of it. And so, like, that's something that that I think has been a resurgence. Well, not necessarily a resurgence, but has been sort of an ongoing experience for me personally. Another one that I will add that I probably would have gotten clowned for a couple of years ago is Gap.
Okay.
Okay, like, I've always loved me a Gap jean. Okay, and then like, you need since high school, you need a basic t-shirt, you need a basic sweater, you need a basic, and you can always jazz it up, with jewelry or like a little makeup, a different shoe, a purse, whatever. You can always dress it up, but like the basics are consistent, particularly the denim. And my experience of the consistency when I was younger was like at the mall, like that, kind of communal experience. But like now with social media, and perhaps because Zach Posen came in and sort of rejigged and turned it up a notch from a fashion standpoint, but like I think I was just brought back in with the global girl group Cat's Eye and their campaign that they did. I mean, it was just absolutely genius because it wasn't just that it was the girl group that they brought in. They like reignited that community around the brand on social, not with like, you know, something that was necessarily completely innovative,
Mm.
but what helped reignite the brand was actually just going back
Right.
to what had made them successful in the first place, and also tapping into that hunger that people have for that time period, but also for community and to sort of see themselves represented in joy by way of these young ladies. Now, I'm sure there are parents all over the world that have critique of how these young ladies were styled and, everything else, but also because I happen to follow their debut through Netflix, I already knew who they were.
Mhm.
And just like, because these young women are pretty exceptional dancers for the amount of singing that they actually do, it just really fit well with that sort of Gap aesthetic that some of us had come to know and love with like a 2025 stamp on it. It was like definitely a nod, to the past, but like modernizing.
Mhm.
But the community piece of it was people being able to see themselves in it and see each other in it. And social media helped to amplify that. So now there's like even more community around, oh, well, maybe I wasn't engaged in this brand as much before, but now because I see myself in it, because I see them getting back to a ritual that, I found compelling, the back to school kind of ritual and
Right.
sort of getting energized to go back to school and get your outfit together and like all of that. Some of that was lost in the pandemic. So there's like some of that energy that's back. So yeah, I had to drop that. Little Sephora, a little Gap makes me like very suburban Amber, and it's fine. That's how I grew up.
I think there's a couple of other important things that you touched on there
Mhm,
that are inherently cultural, right? So you talked about um, some of the going back to the history
mhm,
of the Gap. You talked about the fact that the people at Sephora are not just there to sell you what you want;
mhm,
they're actually there to help you throughout the process,
mhm,
and they are knowledgeable enough, or they're paying enough attention to say, "Okay, I know you're looking for this, but what about this? Because it may work better for you. Let's try
mhm,
it out."
mhm, mhm.
Um,
And then even having the space to try it out,
right.
you know? Anyway, I'm sorry, continue.
No problem. So we're talking about things that are experiential,
Mhm,
right? Whether it is IRL or in some other way, being able to flip something that once worked to make it relevant to how we are today, which
mhm,
then makes it resonant, right? Because you want resonance more than you want relevance,
mhm,
right? And then also, I'm thinking about a webinar that I was um, viewing earlier today with Dr. Anastasia Karklina Gabriel.
mhm,
And one of the questions that was asked is, how do you know the difference between, what you should be listening to and what you should, just let be said and kind of move on from?
mhm,
And so many of the answers to these questions are understanding culture, is just cultural fluency, understanding who you are to people, who
mhm,
you want to be to people, and making sure they match.
mhm,
It's always interesting to me how so many companies, so many professionals whose careers, whose jobs are connected to numbers, which is basically everybody in some form or fashion, we'll forget about the stuff that affects, or not pay attention to the stuff that affects the numbers,
Mhm.
but doesn't show up on the ledger sheet.
Mm.
That's one of the biggest things about marketing. That's one of the biggest things about branding.
Mhm.
It's not always going to show up directly on that ledger sheet. Yes, there's going to be a cost for it,
Mhm.
but guess what? If you don't spend that money, it affects the money that's coming in. If you don't spend that money correctly, it affects the money that's coming in.
Mhm.
There's I was just doing random research because I'm a nerd, and thinking about the amount of companies that see marketing only as a cost.
Mhm.
And I know this to be true because I've been in enough spaces where that's how marketing is treated.
Mhm.
It's not a cost, it's an investment.
Mhm.
And there's a difference. There's an absolute difference between the two. And if with any sort of investment, if you invest well,
Mhm.
your returns are great.
Right. Mhm.
And marketing is one of those things. Understanding or being fluent in culture, being literate enough to know where you fit, those things help.
Mhm.
And not enough companies are investing in that. Some of them are scared,
Mhm.
some of them don't see the value in it, but the ones who are always celebrated seem to.
Mhm.
So if the ones that are celebrated, the ones that become icons, are doing this, how is it that you're like, well, yeah, I don't know if it's for us?
I have a thought on that.
Okay.
And this is definitely related to my teaching. Um, and I haven't taught in a classroom in a while, so correct me if I'm wrong. But when I was teaching in business school, and I would have, of course, marketing majors in my classroom 'cause I was teaching in the marketing department, but I would also have the finance students and the accounting students in, and this was true for my undergrads as well as my grad students. My finance and accounting students were not encouraged to take marketing seriously. Um, they saw it as more of an elective
Hmm.
than a um, as a mandatory.
Right.
And even though within their program, at least, they had several marketing classes that were required, they still saw them in their mind, they shaped them as electives. And I think that people carry those attitudes into the workplace and into leadership as they develop. They kind of they get into their sort of narrow perspective and point of view. Um, and so not necessarily bringing together
Hmm.
the the impacts of marketing with what is important and necessary from a finance and accounting perspective, and how marketing can, bring dollars into those areas as well. So there's a it it exists. I think it
Yeah.
still exists.
Well, that gap is still there. That's the bad gap
Mhm.
for real. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about this forever. And we kind of will, because it's kind of underpins the entire
Sure.
podcast itself.
Yes.
Uh, but I do want to say, let's wrap this episode of
Okay.
Deconstructed up. And thank you to all of you who have watched. Please feel free to comment. Of course, follow, subscribe, like, comment, the the whole culture of entity, because this is part of it all. And we're gonna get ready for another episode. This was a fun one. Many of these subjects will come back again, so just stay tuned, and we will see you again very soon.